Hello and welcome to Reanimated Reanimators. This is episode 240 of this fair podcast. I am Stuart, currently unknown COVID status. Joining me is a much more healthy H.A. Conrad in New York. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I think I'm weathering this. I think we maybe talked about this last week, but maybe because I generally have a low level anxiety all the time about these kinds of things, I feel somewhat better prepared to cope with it than other people might. So, or at least to calm myself down about it. So, I'm doing okay. My husband's definitely at a much higher stress level about all of this. So yeah. I think it's a little bit more severe here than it is where you are currently. Is that a correct assessment?
That is not necessarily a true statement, but tell us
Okay.
about New York. How's Brooklyn specifically? How's your neighborhood?
So our neighborhood is actually okay. Definitely you notice at the stores, and we stocked up but didn't go crazy. I think you see different levels of panic. What's been interesting to see is what people have been stocking up on. The toilet paper thing is really weird. All the pain relievers are gone from the pharmacy, and I cannot get a refill of my inhaler. So there's definitely things that people are doing. That said, I do have enough of an inhaler left. It was just up for a refill, so they automatically did it, and I got a notice. Luckily, I don't use mine on a very frequent basis. It's just there more for emergencies for my asthma. But and happily, knock on wood, it's been under control. But I think people are prepping for the worst, and more in Manhattan, you're seeing the entire stores cleared out of stuff. Different sections of the stores don't have stuff like meat and stuff is gone.
It's kind of weird that they would be taking a perishable like that. But yeah, I was at the butcher yesterday, and they were still trying to restock from Friday. There'd been a huge rush after work on Friday.
And it seems to be different waves because, the store was restocking, so later in the day there apparently was more.
This is the thing, supply chains are fine. This is kind of absurd. But it is also we better get in there before supply chains are interrupted, which might not even happen.
I think especially in this neighborhood, look, there's a lot of families with kids. All schools have not been canceled. It seems like a lot of the private schools are closed. And then certainly case by case, they're deciding what to do with the public schools. I know in DC, my niece and nephew they're in Arlington, Virginia, and they've had school closed now. They were alerted that it's closed for the next month, and they're moving to remote learning for that time. And they're in a public school, so I think it's only a matter of time before that comes here. But there's a lot of issues here in New York with doing that. One is that you've got a lot of homeless children who don't have access to food and laundry and other things, and school is a safe place for them. I think they were tallying 114,000 children are homeless here in New York, which is a pretty horrible,
a crazy high number.
And so part of it is that they don't want to shut down the schools because of those children. But the other part is that you've got a lot of people on the front lines, doctors, nurses, people that keep the city running, don't have access to childcare if the schools do close down. So you don't want to take them out of it. So I think they're trying to figure out what to do with that. So it's a big issue. And my hope with all of this is that maybe once it's over, people take a long, hard look at some of these things, because it's not a flattering. There's some definite problems here with our social safety nets. So,
how often have you been going outside? When was the last time you went outside?
I've been going outside every day, though we're trying not to interact too much with people. We're trying to limit social contact and be good neighbors in that way. We took a walk up to the park, but everybody's kind of keeping their distance. My company said everybody works from home from now on until further notice. I think that's sort of, if you can do that, that's kind of the case for white-collar workers in New York. They don't want people on the subways. And people have been told to like how stock up, which I think is part of why there was such a run on everything. Definitely in Manhattan, you're seeing a lot more photos of like people are waiting outside of Trader Joe's and then cleaning out the shelves. Like there was definitely a level of panic. You can't get wipes, antiseptic wipes, or the Purell, which has been the case now for a while, but definitely no chance of it now, and you can't get them anywhere else, like on eBay or anything.
The toilet paper thing kind of just hit here last week, or yeah, at the end of last week.
The toilet paper thing is really strange.
I mean, I've read some accounts that suggest it's like a low cost minimum
Security
preparation
blanket.
sort
Yeah.
of thing you can do. Yeah, that gives you a bit of a good happy feeling, but it is kind of it is also just disruptive.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily, I've always buy toilet paper by the case.
Yeah.
I mean, I have been, and I had a backlog. So, but it's just for people who don't buy toilet paper, buy like the 50 rolls, and suddenly you're out. It's going to be a problem.
We were to be clear, I was seeing people buying it, but like not there was still stuff available. So, um, you know, that's not, at least in my neighborhood, that's not an issue so far. But people are definitely buying it more probably than they used to. So there's like definite brands that are gone. The generic paper's still there, so I guess it's a last resort for people.
They don't want that single ply, but they're going for that good stuff.
They're not buying the Total Home from CVS.
Interesting.
They're not stooping to that level yet.
Because it's just it's all gone here. I mean, it's getting restocked, but then it doesn't last long.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I put an article in our show notes about this guy in Tennessee who's an Amazon seller, and he went out, and him and his brother did a 1,300-mile road trip, whereupon they cleaned out every single little store and big store that they could of Purell and Clorox wipes. And I'm a little bit shocked that he agreed to have his photo up on, with his name up on the front page of the New York Times, or whatever section that was, to own up to the fact that he had done this. And he was trying to sell it for like pretty big markups on Amazon and eBay, and then that all got shut down, and now he's left with this stockpile of stuff.
That he'll have to sell for reasonable prices.
If
He can
he
probably
will,
still he could probably still sell it for regular prices, but then he won't be getting a
right,
return on his ridiculous investment.
right,
But what he's
the
doing
thing
is
that really,
is sick. Like it's gouging.
well, it's more than that. He and his brother, and I'm trying to find something, and it's hard for me, but like they basically went out and they went into communities that have little to no access, like very little access to these things as it is, because if you think about like the restocking chain, as I said, here in New York, people are restocking pretty frequently. These are like pretty rural areas, so their ability to get this stuff was already limited, and you just took it all from them. I did see, because of the backlash from this article, that he was talking about just selling it at cost and or donating it. So maybe he's going to do the right thing, but it doesn't change the fact that now all those places that they cleaned out don't have access to that. So that doesn't fix that problem. Also, he tried to sort of paint himself as the victim here because Amazon shut him down for selling it, and it's like, no, dude, you are the bad guy here, and maybe
There are laws
should...
against that, and well, at least in California, which people will say is like a communist state, but there are laws against gouging here. So
Right.
you do that, you would get prosecuted by the DA.
Right. And so I hope he gets it now. And it's not just him, by the way. Like, to be clear, I don't mean to just be picking on him. This has
been going on since masks
behave-
were all
Right.
hot stuff 2-3 weeks
Right.
ago.
So I just think, when I think about all the elderly people, the immunocompromised people, but especially our doctors and nurses on the front line, like, I just don't understand this behavior. Like, we're not going to get through this by doing this, but it makes me sad to see that this is sort of the worst, that this is what's happening. And look, maybe you think that this is, I can see maybe people thought that this wasn't going to be a long-term thing and they're just kind of seeing the market and doing what they do normally. Well, this isn't normal and this is a crisis. And there is a big difference between, say, buying these limited edition sneakers and selling them for a profit and then buying vital medical supplies or medical tools to be able to fight this thing. So anyway, let's hope those people eventually do the right things. And honestly, good for eBay and Amazon for cracking down on it. So
So until yesterday at 9:30 p.m. we still had only 3 confirmed cases in the county, and they were all from cruise ships.
yeah, well, that makes sense.
And like specifically the Diamond Princess and the Grand Princess, that poor cruise line, they're gonna
Yep.
have to seriously change their names. Part of the reason was, as is probably a very well trodden narrative, lack of testing opportunities. And so finally they decided, or they got in enough tests that they were like, we're gonna do a surveillance testing system, and they selected 60 individuals, like high risk, I guess, or people with enough symptoms to make it worthwhile to test them in a proactive way, they're calling it. And they got yesterday a community spread positive result, and within hours, the schools announced that they were going to be closed until April 5th at the very least. Like our spring break starts on Monday, and camp had already our kids were signed up for camp in the local community center. That got canceled way earlier. But now that we have one case of community spread, and there was already some messaging that suggested that there was an assumption of community spread just without any proof. It really just, this narrative of not having enough tests to know how serious a situation this was is clearly something that's being played out national news wise. I don't have to go into it, but on the local level, there's the effect that that's having is pretty noticeable. And so everybody is working from home, just like you have been. I don't think that I am necessarily, because I'm going to be part of a version of the response to this.
Right.
And yet restaurants is a curious thing. I don't know how Brooklyn is doing. I feel like a lot of our local businesses have been doing a really good job of proactive messaging, saying, hey, you know what? We've always cleaned with
Yep.
really good stuff, and we take care of the food we sell here because we also eat it, and we're going to need your help, especially here where we already had a major fire and business interruption with power outages in the last 6 months. Our industry, which is somewhat tourist facing, is going to be going through some serious hard times, and so they're trying to get people to still, they're offering delivery, which sometimes they, in the past they haven't offered, and now they're saying, and you know what, we'll bring it to you. And it's already been expensive for me because I keep being like, hey, but we should support local business. So yeah, this is, I still don't know how bad or how extensive this is going to be, but I feel like it's just the tip of the iceberg still.
Yeah, I would say things are a lot, restaurants and bars are really suffering here. And look, I don't mean to say that that's good, but it's good that people are taking it seriously. But we've gotten a lot of emails from places that we tend to frequent asking us to, if we can, buy like a gift certificate or order out. And, our neighborhood diner is noticeably empty, but they've been doing a lot of takeout, so I'm hoping that will help. But I know the owner of that diner pretty well, and it's a family-run business, and he says it's kind of going in waves, but obviously their business is suffering because they rely so much on foot traffic, right? And people are really trying to do the right thing, and that's the thing. It's like, I get why people are not going there. It's not to hurt the businesses. It's just because this is what we have to do. Social distancing is the only way to flatten the curve of the spread. And honestly, if you see what's coming out of Italy right now, you understand the necessity to do it. Italy is really hard hit, and it's bad. The hospitals and healthcare centers are overrun. And so when you look at a population center like New York, Governor Cuomo basically gave a pretty realistic like rundown of how many beds there are and how many ventilators there are that are not currently supporting people who need them, and it's pretty bleak. So this is drastic. All the institutions that people come to visit in New York are shut down right now. So MoMA, the Met,
Broadway.
Broadway, all those things are shut down right now, and this is going to be really tough going. But I think it shows the severity of the situation and what they're trying to do. And it's not. I think that there is a realistic view that probably very similar to what Angela, is it Angela Merkel?
Angela Merkel.
You can say it better than I can. She basically gave the very real stats that probably about
70%.
70 to 80% of the German population will get this, and I think that's probably right.
That's I think that's not an accidental number, because we've seen that percentage thrown out by epidemiologists before too.
So I don't think people have any illusions that if you do this, you won't get it, because I think most people will get it. But I think that they're looking to slow down people getting it because they want to protect some of those really vulnerable populations. And so, my uncle is in a home right now for rehab because he's been quite ill. And he's in his 80s, and they basically shut it down to all visitors. And they have to, because that's the population that's so vulnerable. And so, I think
you gotta wonder though, why Italy has been hit with this insane escalation of the numbers when it kind of was already a bit of an advanced curve. Yeah, what's your theory?
My theory is that, especially in the places that have been the hardest hit, they are massive, close quartered, tourism centers. The majority of the people who are coming in there's I think we've seen this everywhere, and I've noted it in the past few years, but there's a lot of Chinese tourism, and I think people were probably passing it along not knowing, and it's probably been circulating there and other places since probably December, and then it kind of caught up. Also, Italians are a very social group of people, so even when they were sort of shutting down some of these things, they were not taking it totally seriously. I think they certainly are now. I'm sure you saw the video of the Italians singing and from their balconies, which they just can't stand to not socialize. So I get that. But I think that's in part what's going on, because even though they were taking measures, they weren't shutting down restaurants and things like that, and people were still getting together. They also have an older population too, and I think that's in part what's going on as well. But
you've seen also these articles since yesterday about U.S. airports, people coming back from Europe queued up for 6 hours to get to luggage claim. I guess they're going through screening for coronavirus, and they're all slammed together, packed together into these hallways. It's a terrible scenario for transmission and
I
carriers.
think you're looking at, basically, those photos tell me that I think you're looking at massive areas of transmission at that point, which just seems totally insane. Bananas, if you will.
I've also seen some, not as much of this, but photos of packed nightclubs after, universities cancel classes. Not all of them are sending everybody away like Harvard did when they were just you got 2 days to get out of here. So some of them are just oh, no school? Okay, party on, dude.
The thing that struck me, and I think that's why they had to shut down, but Disney World and Disneyland were packed.
Yeah.
And it was I saw some of the photos out of there, and it was totally nuts. And I think that they didn't really have much of a choice, because they don't want to be
spring break, man. Think about all those venues, and I'm sure that the beaches in Florida are still probably getting some business. I don't know if they've shut down those entire towns.
Miami Beach just shut down their beaches, I think.
Well done. I mean, otherwise, because some of these kids are oh, I spent $600 on my hotel room, and I don't have any way to get that back. There are going to be alibis. I've definitely still been seeing people in LA talking about, wait, why is this nightclub still promoting ladies' night or whatever on Sunday? What? This doesn't make any sense. So some places still are not taking this in a responsible manner.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting to watch the responses of different businesses and the ones who have gotten ahead of this. My person who does all my like rowing instruction and training and things like that. She basically is like, yeah, I'm gonna like be doing things remotely, but she set up like an Instagram feed, so she's been doing like Instagram live workouts for people, which I thought was pretty cool. Like people are trying to be creative about ways to work around this, but not put people in danger and taking it very seriously. And I think you kind of have to be an example.
Mm.
And there's definitely still I've been seeing, I have a couple of more conservative friends that have been unfortunately putting up some stuff about this being a media driven crisis. It's not. You only have to look to Italy and China to see that it's not.
I mean, the White House has embraced the fact that this is serious at this point, so
Sort of,
I'm
but
not sure
not.
why there are that many holdouts.
Right. I think people are scared, and I think it's easier to think that this is a hoax than to look at the horrible reality of what it is. But
In
it is
another
real.
example of people having interesting ideas about the origins of this, the
Oh
show
God.
Pandemic on Netflix,
Yeah, that's been like way up through the. I
how
know,
to
I
prevent
saw
an
that.
outbreak. So it showed up at the beginning of the year. I think by the time it showed up, coronavirus was probably in the wild. You and I noticed, first mentioned it on January 6th on one of our podcasts, first podcast of the year. Well,
Uh
you
huh.
mentioned it. I had no idea. You were like, there's 44 cases in China. And I was like, okay, HA, settle down. And now here, look where we are. 100 and, what are we at? 156,000 cases.
Yep.
So, Cassandra, you are not. However, so when we first started talking about this, the show Pandemic showed up around the same time on Netflix, and it's talking about bird flu primarily. I don't know how many episodes there are. I only watched the first one, but it
Mm.
is extremely, I don't know, prescient in
Yep.
in the subject matter. And apparently, they came out, some of the executive producers did an article or an interview with Mashable saying, you know what, some people think that Netflix started the virus to like get people to watch their show. I mean, apparently Contagion, the Steven Soderbergh film that you and I have
Yep.
talked about, has become one of the most rented or bought films on Amazon Prime. So there could be an argument made that this is a money making scheme, but it would be that's some pretty deep state type
Yeah.
conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that this stuff just happens, and if you've got, I mean, this thing I don't think happened any differently from bird flu or SARS or any of those things, and that's that it jumps from a population, probably the bats again, those little virus carrying bats, um, to animals to us, and I think that this is just how these things work, and because of the global nature of our economy and how people can travel so quickly from one place to another, and we also have super dense population centers. It's not shocking. That's how these things work. And you only have to look at how the flu pandemic in 1918 happened, the Spanish flu, and to know that and that's like how it spread then before there was, and then part of that was because we had servicemen going everywhere and going all around the world, so it was a very similar mechanism, albeit it's a little bit more slow, but same idea. I did, you know it is interesting to note, especially in Philadelphia, where they decided to hold a parade in 1918 to celebrate how much everybody was going to fight the flu pandemic, and then that ended up being one of the worst places because they did that. So I was very gratified to see that they postponed the New York St. Patrick's Day parade, and they're trying to do all the right things, but we're just seeing that it's moving a little too quickly. So hopefully, I don't know. I don't. I also think with the conspiracy theorists and the idea that this could be manufactured, I feel like if that were the case, it would be a lot more deadly. Because at least in the Soderbergh film, this is a much more deadly virus than what we're currently seeing.
Yeah, that one has a much higher death rate. Also, I saw on Twitter Stephen King
Oh
was
yes,
being
that
like,
was hilarious. He
"Hey
got trolled
guys,
by somebody, right?
this is not the same as the Stand. That was a way more deadly disease. Just wash your hands," or something along those lines. And then there was a response, but I don't feel like that's even worth bringing up. And somebody
Well,
was
that
like,
guy
"What
was
have
being
you even read the book?"
yeah, that guy was deliberately trolling him to try to get people to like him. So but it still was pretty funny.
I just thought that it was interesting that Stephen King had to come out of
Yeah,
the sidelines and be like, "Hey, don't compare coronavirus to Captain Trips. That was a
yeah,
whole different situation."
very different thing. Yeah.
And
So
Max Brooks has also done an AMA, which I sent to you from Reddit, where he was talking about his take on the response, and I thought there were some pretty interesting answers
yeah, he also
that
did an
he was giving.
op-ed. I sent it to you. I think
Yeah,
I sent it to you. He did an op-ed in the New York Times about social distancing and what we can do. And I thought it was pretty even and thoughtful. So I always like hearing from him. He's a good writer. It's nice
and he
to
does have a rational, kind of reasonable response to stuff. And as he points
right.
out in the AMA, the fact that he wrote World War Z, based on that book and the research he did, he's now like an adjunct professor at West Point,
I know, I
which
know.
makes you kind of widen your eyes a little bit.
Yep.
In some more frivolous news about coronavirus, a bunch of movies are getting delayed. I feel like the slowdown of productivity in this country is going to come back to bite us eventually. But
Yep.
for now, a bunch of films have been delayed. Some of them I don't even know what they are, but the ones that I recognize are F9, which is the Fast and Furious number
Yep.
9 movie. The Lovebirds, which is the one where Kumail Nanjiani shows off his abs for the first time, I guess.
Yep.
I assume. Mulan, the New Mutants, or the New Mutants, depending on how you like to say that. No Time to Die, which is the new Bond movie.
Bond.
And A Quiet Place Part 2, which is a bummer because I was excited to see that. And now they're all kind of, some of them are TBD and some of them are just getting pushed to like later in the summer or later in the spring.
Right, but I think there's a couple reasons. One is that they don't feel like they're going to get people to watch it,
Oh
but I
yeah.
think they're trying, especially with like the Disney one, they're trying to not have people be out there in movie theaters or whatnot. Although I will tell you, Alamo Drafthouse and Nighthawk, two of my favorite places, have shut down their theaters for a while, like into the beginning of April, I believe, because they're trying to make sure that people aren't spreading this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
I've
and
seen local theaters saying, we're going to stay open for now. Don't think a lot of new releases are coming, so it might be some older stuff. But sit yourselves 6 feet away and stand 6 feet apart in the lobby, and we should be okay. I feel
yeah.
like that's not an irresponsible way to go through this either.
And Disney did up the timeline to put Frozen 2 on
Oh,
Netflix,
dude,
I believe.
watched it last night with the fam. It was awesome. I
Yeah.
didn't think it was going to be on Disney Plus until today, and then we were like looking for something to watch last night, and hey presto, to
Yep.
Frozen 2, and it was I hadn't seen it yet, so it was fun. I liked it.
And one thing, that's the other thing people are watching a lot of Netflix, Hulu streaming, all that stuff. So we'll see if the providers can keep up with it, because I
Let's
think
hope.
that's and especially people working from home, that's going to be another piece of it.
Italy's been seeing a massive spike in online gaming. Yeah, so
Also in porn. So
oh
that's
really?
the other end. Apparently, there's been an uptick in trade with like sex toy shops and stuff, like people ordering that kind of thing. So that's kind of interesting too.
Just the
So
just the-
different little pockets of the economy are going to be doing just fine as long as people can do it while they're home, social distancing. So
correct. Yeah. Have
right.
we covered all of the coronavirus news that we care to cover right now?
I think just about the one other thing I will mention, just as an add-on to my last statement, is that one of the things people are talking about is that they believe that there will be a baby boom
Yep.
following this, for obvious reasons. We've seen this. There were definitely Sandy babies from the Hurricane Sandy. And if you think about it, these are things that happened in a couple of days, and they saw a boom and an uptick from that. So I think probably makes sense, if people are all like having to stay home, that this would, but this, people are like kind of joking a little bit about it. They were like, "What is it going to look like? What are these going to be? Corona babies?"
Yep,
So
pretty much.
yeah, so that's kind of
Hopefully,
funny.
this doesn't last as long as the Spanish flu, which was 18 months, which means that you might, start your baby making process today and only be halfway through the crisis
Right.
when they're born. But
Right.
yeah, let's hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
Just for the record, we are currently, like I said, at 156,400 confirmed cases. These numbers, again, are like,
A
this is just
little
as many
weird.
tests as we have, right?
Right.
80,995 are in China. That number really has basically stayed in the 80,000 for more than 2 weeks now. Italy, 21,157. Iran, 12,729. Then South Korea, Spain, Germany, France, US has 2,952. And as I was saying, at least in my community, that number, it's gonna have to go up by a lot. We've been
Yeah.
saying that. That's not new. Anyway, those are the numbers. And the final piece of coronavirus news for this week is that somebody has already made a zombie movie and is calling it Corona Zombies. Apparently, it's already in post production,
Uh,
and that's crazy to me.
so
We'll have a,
do you think that they retrofitted this, that maybe they
of
were already
course,
doing? Of course they did. Like there's no way they could have.
no way.
Yeah.
They had a zombie movie about a contagion already, and they're just gonna, I don't know, loop in some other audio or something and be like coronavirus. But
Oh my goodness.
the poster art does feature a lot of toilet paper and Purell.
Oh, that's kind of funny.
This is not going to be a quality project. I don't think
No,
we're
no,
gonna.
no.
I don't think we're gonna look at this. But I just think it's bananas that that's out there. And zombie news, I did discover an Instagram account for one of the regular zombies on The Walking Dead. Alex the Hill is the name. Oh, I guess his name is Alex Hill. He is a lot of the more noticeable zombies on the show. It's a pretty. The Instagram account goes back years. He's been doing zombies on this show for a long time.
Wow.
At least since they moved to Alexandria. He was one of the zombies who ate the annoying family.
Oh.
So, just something to check out. I'll have that link in the show notes too, and some really cool shots of the makeup and some of the
Yeah.
more noticeable zombies that we've.
The makeup
gotten
is
to.
pretty. The makeup is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, and at the very beginning of his like history, there are pictures of what he actually looks like as a human. Otherwise, it's almost all zombie makeup and the occasional cocktail. Oh, actually, there's one of him, like just 12 pictures in. Anyway, so Alex Hill, cool, check it out. Now, are we ready to talk about 2 episodes, 5 and
are.
6 of season 10? What It Always Is and Bonds.
Yeah. Got lots going on here in these couple of episodes. And this was What It Always is written by Laura Belzy, directed by Eli Journay. And this is, like, there's lots of stuff going on. There's lots of setup in this going on.
Yeah.
So, sort of playing upon different things that we've kind of heard a little bit about. The biggest, like, one of the things is that Kelly, who we saw, was talking about losing her hearing in the first episode of the season, is clearly losing her hearing, and I think that it definitely shows how scary that would be if you're used to using that. But one of the questions I definitely had while rewatching this was, again, I had it while I first watched it, is if you know that that's going on, why are you going out by yourself? Because if your hearing is kind of going in and out, it definitely puts you in danger.
Yep.
And it's not like she doesn't know what will happen because her sister has already gone through this. Apparently it's genetic. So it did bother me a little bit because I feel like she's smarter than this, but also the people in her group know about this, or at least her sister does. So did that bothered me a lot just watching it, but I thought it played out really, the way they showed it was kind of cool, because she's like killing this boar and she's sort of like hearing muffled things, and then walkers are like, just like, she doesn't hear them coming for her, and it just shows that fear and how vulnerable she is, and the panic that would
when
ensue.
they've done this perspective before with Connie too, when she was in the cornfield and they were just like, "Yep, there's a zombie right in front of you. You had no idea that was there."
Yep.
It's very scary. but the thing with her losing her hearing, that like in film they translate also into like being like having blurry camera work,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, well, wait, what is her vision going too? Why is her like what's
Well,
up with that?
I think they're trying to show the level of panic. And, if you get panicked or if something really scary happens, I think you have an adrenaline rush and your fear kind of takes over. So I think the world can kind of seem to close in. Your blood pressure goes up or suddenly drops. And I think it could cause some of those things. So I think that they show the disorientation that she probably is feeling pretty well here, but I kind of agree with you. There is a little bit of confusion in how they play it about what exactly is going on.
Yeah, and then she kind of passes out. I mean, she runs and falls and passes out, and then there's the hand, and then there's the cut to the credits. Turns out that hand was not the zombie after all. It was I forget whose hand it was, but it was friends. This is also all part of this effort to reveal the fact that the Magna group has been stealing supplies, apparently without the knowledge of Connie or Kumiko, but just and underscores some of the schism that's going to be coming up between Magna
Right.
and Kumiko, and just that Magna's still just a very angry person.
It felt like this kind of we the only like I felt like this kind of I was a little bit bothered about this part of the storytelling because it felt like it came from nowhere to some extent. We just started to see some of this dissension in some of her commentary to Kumiko and her comments about Kumiko making decisions and ignoring the others. So it felt a little forced to me.
Oh,
This
it's
group,
Yumiko, not Kumiko.
sorry,
That's my bad.
Yumiko.
That's my bad.
Sorry. It felt like this group has been tight knit, almost as tight knit as Rick and his group has been. So it felt a little bit weird. And especially weird to me that Connie wouldn't know from Kelly, because Kelly, I feel, isn't going to keep stuff from Connie. Do you feel that? Like, so that felt a little sloppy to me. But okay, I guess we give it to them, and it serves a purpose because you're going to see,
Is Kelly implied? Is it implied that she knows about the stash, or is it all
Yes.
Magna just operating by herself?
Nope, it seems like Kelly knows about it.
Yeah,
Because
then even makes less sense. Apparently, they did this before when they've been in other communities that have failed, but still.
right. And also, if they had done this in other communities that have failed, it feels like Yumiko would have known about it and kind of counteracted it, or at least been talking to them, and Connie probably would have known about it. And we also know that this didn't necessarily work out so well for them. So, like, it seems a little weird to me, but fine. Okay, we'll give it to them. But in any case, we also have the encounters between Erin and Gamma, because this is another mystery to me still. Aaron sees that Gamma is basically cutting the guts of walkers into water supply. Sorry to jump forward to the next episode, but we see that we see it a little bit in this episode, but we hear that people are getting sick. It feel like Aaron probably would have alerted the community to this?
Yeah,
Right?
and for the longest time, or for the rest of this part of the season, I was under the impression that it was because of those actions by Gamma that people were getting sick. But it turns out that's not the case. So
Well,
I
right.
don't know. It's not shown if Aaron is subsequently pulling the walkers
Yeah.
out of the stream bed after Gamma leaves. It's not.
Right.
That's not clear. So I would assume he is, because
Okay,
he is a
but
responsible person.
he is, but okay, and I know that that is ultimately not what is causing them to get
Yeah.
sick, but you would think that they would be much more aware of what's going on with their water supply because he did see these things happening. I guess that's my point.
Yeah, and he'd be reporting back and saying, "Oh, by the way, yeah, the Whisperers are totally going on a campaign of
Right.
undermining us right now." And so,
Right.
high alert, everybody. We don't ever feel like he is really communicating that much.
But he's giving bandages to Gamma, so that's all right.
I mean, that's a strategy by itself.
I know. And then we see what happens with Negan, which is that, he's escaped. He's followed by Brandon, who is the son of some of the, what's it face?
Saviors.
Think, pardon?
He's a child of some saviors.
He's a child, we think, based upon
I
what
mean,
he says.
he talks about Rick, taking care of his parents or something.
Yeah, and he also has gone out of his way to create a Lucille for Negan and also get his jacket for him.
He also asks an interesting question of Negan, which is, "How did you get out of your cell?" So apparently, it wasn't him, and
Right.
I don't think that Brandon is smart enough to be playing a game with Negan about like, I really
No,
did it, but I'm going to ask you if you did it or how you did it. It's been disproven that it was Lydia, so there's still an unanswered question out there.
there it is.
Interesting.
And Negan's doesn't answer that and just kind of smiles. So he's not telling,
Of
at
course, he's
least at
gotten out
this
of his cell
point.
before, just because of somebody
Right.
who didn't lock the gate. So
But I feel like his reaction indicates that there's somebody else involved. At least that was my impression. I love Negan. He's like I love this actor.
well, the next
So,
episode certainly only helps you
yeah.
develop that
Right.
affection, and it is an interesting like emotional space we end up in after the second episode we're talking about today, and whatever we see of this one, where he, yeah, well, like we like him? I mean, we like
Well,
Jeffrey Dean Morgan,
I
but we
like the
don't. Yeah,
actor, but I think, he's been changed, I think, by living in this community. There's definitely still some of those tendencies with him.
that's certainly clear by the end of this first
Right.
episode.
And but it's interesting because basically the whole point of this character that is, of Brandon is that Brandon is basically presenting a return to the old Negan. He's basically saying that we should go and start a new sanctuary.
At the
He
same
even
time, he's a
says
way lamer version of any of the old saviors that we used to know, like the mustache twirly saviors.
he is, but he's easily manipulated.
Yeah.
Negan could totally manipulate him into doing whatever he wants him to do.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about it is that Brandon is repeating back sort of the mythology of the saviors to Negan, who created Sanctuary and created that whole community. And I
Well, he
think
said he took it over from somebody else, but not to quibble. Go on.
well, right, but still, he Brandon is basically parroting back the things that he has heard, but it's sort of like a game of telephone, and it's not very cool things. Like, I mean, he's even saying, "Oh, I heard you cut off Carl's hand, and you like killed him, or like all this other stuff," and he gets really upset about that, and says, "I don't kill kids," and it's just
Although he
basically all
totally
the
threatened to back in the day.
he did. But it basically evolves into this whole thing where Negan's sort of faced with this idea of what he used to be or what people think he used to be and reacts really poorly to that. And ultimately, I feel like it's almost, despite the violence in which he ultimately behaves in this episode towards Brandon, he is rejecting all of the things that he was before and also embracing them in a different way, possibly. That was kind of a cool evolution to see, though it was a hard one. He and Brandon come upon a mother and her son who have survived and basically were sort of set adrift by the Whisperers into their community. They're on their own again, and Negan basically saves them and then offers to take them to Alexandria.
To Hilltop.
Or is it Hilltop or
he,
Alexandria?
he says it has walls and a big mansion in the middle, so
Oh, so it'd be Hilltop, right. So, not necessarily to bring them all the way in, but to put them close enough that they might take them in. And this is a very different Negan than we saw before. He does say certain things, which to Brandon, which is that, look, people are resources. You don't kill resources. And Brandon's like, these aren't resources. We should just like kill them and take all their stuff. And Negan reacts badly to that, and then ultimately Brandon thinks it's a test. We see like there is a very weird conversation between Negan and the kid who are bonding, and the whole thing about the nut tapping was really weird.
yeah. But it's also it's consistent for Negan. He was that kind of guy, I guess.
Yeah, but if you take it out, put it into the context that this is a mother and a son who have been out there. They know people are horrible. Negan's talking about some weird stuff. I don't know. It's a little creepy if you ask me. But whatever. It's Negan being Negan, and it just shows. I think they're trying to show that he has that bond between. He has a thing for kids.
He likes in a not as creepy way as you're putting it, but yeah.
Yeah, but he also talks about his wife in a in a nostalgic way. He's talking about planes in a nostalgic way. So we're seeing a different side of him than we've seen. We've seen more of the Negan that we see when he interacts with Judith and with Lydia.
Yep, basically that's and with Carl originally,
And
except
with Carl.
when the power dynamic is very different.
Right.
With Brandon being so overtly a Negan file, you gotta wonder why he was ever put in charge of Negan's security detail. Like, how
Right.
did nobody at Alexandria? Because he was the guy with the spear who would
Yep.
be like, Negan, sir, you're not supposed to talk to. You're supposed to pick tomatoes or whatever.
Right.
So how? I feel like that was a pretty gross oversight in the part of the Alexandria HR department. But moving on
Right.
from that, I guess maybe he was sneakier than he is now. Now he's
doesn't
just
seem very
butchering the
bright.
whisperer, butchering the savior whistle, and thinking that things are tests, which clearly aren't.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be the sharpest knife. So I don't believe he would have been able to hide that from the people that were in charge of setting up Negan's security detail. And also, regardless, I don't think they would put anybody near him that had anything to do with the Saviors,
Right.
let alone somebody whose parents had been killed in that particular conflict.
You never see Laura in scenes with Negan after she becomes a trusted member of the community, even.
Right. So that's an interesting thing. And ultimately, Negan takes out Brandon, but he does put on his jacket. He pulls Lucille out to get to work, and he goes and he directly confronts the Whisperers. And he has his nice little speech. We see that return of Negan, but I think you're meant to question what he's doing because of what we just saw happen with Brandon. So it was a nice twist, I thought, just in a cool way to end the episode. There's other things we're going to talk about, but I just want to follow Negan a little bit.
I think that's the most interesting part of this episode.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's more of this like Magna Yumiko Kelly recovery mission, the reveal of Ezekiel's, really why he was so besides himself that he thought that suicide was an option in the previous episode, which is that he has thyroid cancer and a big old lump in his throat.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Which Sadiq tries to look at, and he's slapping him away. And then Sadiq compares Ezekiel's cancer to his PTSD, which I feel like is a strange choice to make.
It is.
You're like, as a doctor, I'm going to talk about myself here for a little while.
Well, I think the point is that Sadiq is saying that they should talk about it versus suffering alone, and I get what he's trying to say there. So
Sure.
I understand that. And he hasn't been really talking about what's been happening with him to anybody but Dante. So that's
Sadiq,
interesting.
right. True. Yeah, that is interesting. Dante, we got to look a couple more scenes with Dante in the next episode. But I think, are we good with this one, number 5?
Yeah, I think
Move on
we're
to
good.
6?
We can leave this and jump into the next one, which is Bonds, written by Dan Liu and directed by Kevin Diebold.
Yep. This is a busy episode. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of Negan's journey in the Whisperers to gain acceptance, because Alpha decides that he should be tested.
Yeah.
And it's I love the
It's
relationship
pretty funny.
between Beta and Negan. It's very fun to watch.
Yep. That's fun to watch. Also, just Negan cannot shut up ever. We know this. He's never been able to shut up.
Yeah, but when he's the real like underdog in this relationship, his mouthiness takes on like almost a masochistic
Yes.
appeal. Like it's like, oh, do you want to get stabbed? And Beta even tries to kill him. Like eventually, he's just like, you never stop talking.
Yeah, it's pretty
And so
amazing.
it was pretty funny. He has a second knife break on him in each of these episodes. Features Negan with a tiny or not a great knife breaking on him, but he also shows his resilience. And we get to see a fair amount of backstory or background on how the Whisperers do things. not just the skinning, but also they cook pigs in pits, which I thought was pretty cool. That they have bows, which we haven't seen them
Yep.
use a lot of ranged weapons yet. So there's some cool insight into how they operate.
Right, and we've also got this is the whole piece with Carol and Daryl. You know, they haven't really, and they set the timeline because we see that her arm is still injured from when she was taking the NoDoz and that kind of thing. And she's definitely setting up like how it all plays out. She is setting up for something, and we know this. Like she's getting ready for something. She takes a look at the gun that she had tried to shoot Alpha with, but we don't know whether she actually takes it or not. And she looks like she's out on a mission. And when Daryl stops her on her way out, she basically says she's been looking for Negan. Clearly, that's not what she's actually doing, and Daryl knows that clearly because he knows her really well. And what she says she's doing is looking for Alpha's horde in order to destroy it. Daryl is not dumb and basically is like, well, what are you actually doing? And he, despite his reservations, agrees to help her. There's some really like funny. There's always like good scenes between him and Carol, and I think that these characters have an understanding between each other that
And just Norman
has,
Reedus and Melissa McBride have good chemistry.
yeah. So there's always these like they're there's always these moments of humor between them, but also understanding. So even though he clearly thinks she's up to something because he like goes through her bag and she's like, "Oh, did you find what you wanted?" And they don't destroy their friendship despite some of these things. And there
It
is
seems
definitely
rockier than usual, though, right? I mean, you gotta.
it does.
There's
I think
definitely some prickles there.
there's prickles, but I think it's clear that he cares about her and is worried about her, and also worried about the effect that their actions might have on the community, which we have seen in the past has not worked out so well. I think that he probably can't forget some of the stuff that happened with the Saviors because of his actions. And
True.
and I think we also saw what happened, when she tried
To
to take a
Rick.
shot. Yeah,
Oh.
to Rick, and when she tried to take a shot at Alpha. So I think that he's trying to be a better person.
He's
There's
trying to, but at the end of the day, he's just enabling her when she
yeah,
is not on her game. And I think
yeah,
we're gonna see how that unfolds as the season goes.
yeah, and I think so they kind of go out and they're like watching all day, and ultimately they end up in the woods, and he has to do the guts thing in order to hide from the whisperers, and
Yeah.
she's captured a whisperer, and clearly that's what she was trying to do, and he's just like, what, WTF?
This might be the first time we've seen the guts thing done on a walker that is not finished off
Totally,
first. He
yeah.
just holds it in like a Nelson hold and does the guts thing with one hand. And then I assume after we don't see him walk away from that situation, but he just kind of holds still and then meets up with Carol later. And I assume he just walked away. He followed through on his mission of don't kill any walkers, don't be seen, just kind
Yep.
of like in and out. Carol, of course, goes off script. She
Yep.
she does not pull back when he wants her to pull back, and then steps on a twig and causes kind of like a big disaster, which
Yep.
ends with them having to, not having to, but ends with them capturing a whisperer to take back to Alexandria.
Right. Right. And so there's that.
We also have the sickness starts to raise its head back at Alexandria with, first Rosita, then several others, this woman Cheryl, and there's some scenes with, a fair amount of scenes with Dante and Sadiq, but Dante also interacting with other people other than Sadiq, which we haven't seen very much of. And he's pretty much the same guy. He's like inappropriately funny or funnily inappropriate. I don't know how you want to put that. Like hitting on Cheryl, and I feel like everybody kind of treats him like you're a dirtbag or you're a jerk. I don't know. Maybe that's just me reading more into it than it's there. But
I think you're reading into it, but I think he is inappropriate. I will comment that this is the first time we've really seen this much of this character that they show this with. So, she's done for.
true.
And anytime they do this with somebody that we don't really see all that much of, and they're trying to build that story, I always get suspicious, and I think I think that's warranted here. The other interesting thing that is happening here is that he is Again, he's always off, and he's been off since the first time we saw him. And they make you question, the writers I think could do a good job at making you question this behavior and then putting you at ease and being like, oh no, he's just a clueless person.
By the end of this episode, Sadiq's thanking him and smiling and being
Right.
chill with him for the first time, really.
But I don't know that he should be, because basically Dante seems to have known that this was out of control, this whatever this stomach illness was, and has been encouraging Sadiq to go hang out with his kid, when clearly that's probably not the best use of Sadiq's time given what's happening. Like,
Yep.
they both need to be involved in this. And that is swept under the rug, I think, a little bit too quickly for my comfort level. But, I guess that's how this plays out. And, we do see a little bit of the limitations of the medical, like what they're able to do. They're really not able to do all that much in
Just
the face
herbs,
of this.
man.
So, and then we also know this is very clear from the conversation in the last episode that Sadiq had with Ezekiel, because there's really no way to treat thyroid cancer in this world. So it's really a tough thing. And I think probably a very tough thing to be a doctor and to know what you could have done before and what is available now.
Yep. He also
so
has
there-
a moment of another moment of PTSD/sleepwalking where he gets
Yep.
hypnotized by his own child's face.
Yep.
Which
Ends up on the windmill.
and ends up on the windmill platform. Like, whoa, okay.
How did I get here?
Yeah,
So,
pretty spooky stuff.
yeah.
And then we also have Eugene has fixed the radio at Hilltop, and he has one conversation with Bozita where she's like, "I just wanted to hear your voice." And it's a little weird because hadn't she
Yeah.
just told him like, "No, you're never gonna get it."
She did, but I think she still values him as a friend, and I think I think in her moment of exhaustion, she was a lot more harsh, and I think she still cares about him as a friend. They've been through a lot, but she doesn't feel for him romantically. Yeah. And I think she wanted him to stop carrying that torch, but it doesn't mean that she, doesn't like him on a friendship basis. So,
But now he's met someone
online, no, via walkie-talkie. And
ham radio, really. I think
ham
it's
radio.
short-wave.
And one
This
thing I will
might
say,
be the voice that we heard at the end of last season. If you recall, there was a voice on the radio.
do.
Yeah.
I do. But I also want to point out that anytime somebody wants to keep something secret, it's usually not a positive thing. Anything.
Yeah, that or it's prudent as it's couched here. I mean, examples of people who should be keeping things secret. I would say Alicia in season 2 of Fear the Walking Dead, who totally reveals her group, size,
Yep.
strength, location to the pirates.
Yep.
Probably shouldn't have done that, but a very similar sort of setup with her talking to a disembodied hot young teenager on the radio.
Well, I'm not saying that, if he wants to keep, what they talk about secret, fine, but to keep it from the community that he's had contact, that is not prudent.
That
that
isn't
endangers-
that's an unreasonable request on her part.
Right.
I would say.
Right. So definitely bothered by that, but you have a lot of prime Eugene here with his funny little things that he says.
Yeah.
So there's that.
The fact that she stays on the radio with him after he reveals that that's the way he talks is also very telling.
Right. And that his handle is Taterbug, which is really funny.
So also in the Negan storyline, one thing we didn't say was Beta kills yet another Whisperer.
Yeah.
I feel like they have killed 3 or 4 of their own people during this
Yeah.
process. I mean, granted, that's probably just to reinforce the fact that they're big bads.
Yeah.
But also it undermines the fact that this could be a functioning community. And
Yep.
the crime that this guy committed, he gave Negan a piece of pork.
Yep.
Just crazy.
Yeah. But we've got Alpha's first interaction with Negan here. And Negan, basically there's definitely some funny moments between Negan and Negan and Beta throughout this, where Beta's putting him through, running him through all the horrible things that he has to do as a Whisperer, basically. There's they're skinning walkers, and Negan's little piece of skin is nothing compared to the big piece that Beta cuts off. Beta's carrying walker bodies for some purpose and is doing them like two at a time because he's like a massive guy, and Negan's like barely pulling one. And
I'm
there's like a
wondering
lot
if
of
they use some like forced perspective in the scene where Beta's kneeling before Alpha. He's almost taller than her kneeling down,
he's
and I don't
kneeling,
know
yep.
that Samantha Morton is like 3 feet tall.
She's
but
pretty small.
Ryan Hurst is only 6'4", so
She's pretty tiny, but I do think they were trying to
I
play
think
it
there
up a
must
little
have been
bit.
something going on in that scene
Yeah.
because they do try to make him look even bigger than he is.
Right. But, and then, Beta's definitely like had his fill of Negan, and leaves him sort of like sets the walkers on him and leaves him to die. And then, it's a classic Negan moment where he comes out and reveals, nope, he's a survivor, and finally comes face to face with Alpha. So there's that, and he kneels to her. He's playing his game.
After giving Beta a bunch of guff
Crap
for
for kneeling.
kneeling. Yeah. And by the way, Samantha Morton is 5'3", so maybe there was no forced perspective. Maybe she's just a little tiny person, and he's
She's
just
little.
And he only loses about a foot when he kneels down.
Yeah. So it's and that's sort of, both of these episodes end with Negan, and in this one he vows to be loyal to Alpha. So, but I love all the Negan moments in both of these. I especially loved all the interactions between Negan and Beta.
What do you want to make a prediction? Is he going to turn on them, or is he going to be a full-fledged member? I know you have the advantage of having seen some episodes since Beyond here, but I think that's still a question that is unanswered as where we are in the season.
How
so what do you
about
think?
I give you what I thought when I first watched this, which is
Okay.
I thought he is playing a game, and I think that part of why this is what I thought was that they were showing his stuff with Brandon deliberately so that that he's basically playing a double agent, even though
to show how far he's come.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought when I first watched this.
Yeah, I think they're making him so likable that they want the audience to think that he's going to be a good guy now. But there's enough
Question.
left in there to make you wonder. Yeah, so it's well done. Honestly, it's well put together, well crafted. So I look forward to continuing this discussion of how this season unfolds, and hopefully this season does not get delayed because of coronavirus.
Yep.
I assume that they're done. I mean, they're done shooting, but can they do all the posts they still need to do for the finale?
Well, I think you can all do all that working from home. So I think probably we'll be able to see it. And I think that they're not going to, I mean, if they have all the stuff that they need, I think that they will probably do their best, because honestly, right now, they've probably got their best audience numbers, like a captive audience, right?
They have a captive audience. This will be a golden age for Nielsen ratings for sure.
We will be reviewing the next couple episodes next time. Is that correct?
We will, and those are going to be episodes 7 and 8.
Yep.
And that'll take us up to the mid-season finale, where there will be much gnashing of teeth and tearing of hair.
Correct. So, and thank you for listening. We'll also keep keeping on in the time of COVID-19, and hope everybody stays healthy out there, and
distant from one another,
socially distant, healthy, and until next time, ciao. And if you want to leave us a note on our website, it's reanimatedpodcast.com, or you can tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or send us a Gmail, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, everybody, and bye-bye.